First of all, we have Tony Incashola Jr. He's a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes and currently serves as the Director of Tribal Resource Management, a role he has held since 2023. In this position, he provides cohesive leadership and accountability for the tribe's cultural and natural resources. Tony began his career with CSKT Forestry in 2002 and has since gained extensive experience across various areas, including timber sales, fire management, and forest development. He became the department head of forestry in 2018, and he further developed his leadership and management expertise. Tony holds a Bachelor of Science in Forestry from Salish Kootenai College. We will also have Kevin Askan. He's the department head of the CSKT Preservation Department, where he brings over 25 years of experience in cultural resource management for the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. Throughout his career, he has actively contributed to all aspects of anthropological studies and cultural resource management. Kevin is well-versed in the scientific documentation of both prehistoric and historic sites and has played a significant role in Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act cases, overseeing processes from recovery to reinternment. Under his leadership, the CSKT Preservation Department is dedicated to the protection and documentation of the cultural heritage of the Salish, Kalispé, and Sanka people. Then we will have Steve McDonald. He is a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes and currently serves as the forest manager for CSKT. He began his career in 1978 as a fire control aide and went on to serve 3 years in the 82nd Airborne Infantry in the U.S. Army. After his military service, he earned an associate's degree from Salish Kootenai College and a bachelor's degree in forest management from the University of Montana. Over the years, Stephen has held a variety of positions within tribal forestry, building a distinguished career in the stewardship of tribal forest resources. Then we have Richard Janssen Jr. He's an enrolled Kalispé tribal member of the CSKT. He has dedicated his entire 33-year career to serving his tribes, and the past 15 years as the department head of natural resources. In his role, he oversees more than 258 employees across multiple divisions, including environmental protection, fish, wildlife, recreation and conservation, and engineering and water resources. Rich holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Montana and a Master of Business Administration from Gonzaga University. Also, at the very end of the table, we have Kathryn McDonald. She is an archaeologist and anthropologist with a bachelor's degree in arts and tribal historic preservation from Salish Kootenai College. She has worked with the CSKT for over 10 years, beginning her career as a field technician. She later served as a tribal historic preservation officer, where she gained extensive experience in agency consultation and cultural resource management. In January of 2024, Katie assumed the role of Tribal Relations Specialist, a position funded by the Good Neighbor Authority, where she works closely with Region 1 of the U.S. Forest Service to support decision-making that impacts tribal cultural resources. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tony Incashola Jr. As Whisper said, I am the Director of Tribal Resource Management for CSKT. I'd like to welcome everybody here to CSKT Aboriginal Territory. To kind of do a setting of where we're at meeting here today and kind of identity of land here. So this is the state of Montana. As you notice, we have 7 reservations in the state of Montana. We are in the Flathead Reservation, or just south of the Flathead Reservation in Missoula, Montana right now. This is Aboriginal territory for the Salish and Kalispé people. This map kind of depicts, as you see, there's really soft lines and shaded areas. This is kind of our Aboriginal territory map that we like to refer back to as part of our ceded lands that we gave back to the U.S. government during our 1855 treaty. We used all of these lands quite a bit. Of course, we've traveled outside of these shaded areas for other resources, tradings and meetings and gatherings with other tribes. As you see here, right in between the two orange outlined reservations, the top one is the current Flathead Indian Reservation. The bottom one is actually the second Flathead Indian Reservation that was outlined in our 1855 treaty. We are sitting right in between them in Missoula, Montana right now. In Flae, this is Missoula. This is the place of bull trout, small bull trout. There's this is kind of a story or a interpretive map that our tribe has done in multiple different areas across our entire Aboriginal territory that we've looked at place names, identified what they were used for, how they were used, what our people traveled there for. It could be either a formation that area was, what grew there, what time of year we were there, sites. And so we've done mapping across all of our Aboriginal territory to basically learn who we are, where we come from, and digitize that so we can pass that tradition and knowledge on to our younger generations. So what is tribal resource management? As I think I've heard today already once, natural resources is cultural resources. And so I get to work with our cultural resource departments, which is the Salish and Kasanka culture committees, along with the preservation office, and all of our natural resource departments, including natural resources, forestry, fire, tribal lands, and the climate change and tribal resources office. So all those grouped together is kind of the tribal resources division or office or department. I wouldn't say department, but this division. And so we take pride on making sure that all of our natural resources are managed with traditional and ecological knowledge intertwined with Western science to make sure that we are implementing the best thing for our land with cultural values. And so we're not managing just for production. We're not managing for certain resources. We include all of our cultural resources in our production. So there may be timber sales that are driven by wildlife needs and discussions, or fisheries and water quality standards. And so we do a unique balance of interdisciplinary team actions within our tribe that brings together all of our different resource managers into a room, and we decide together as a collective whole of how these projects need to move forward and what the reasoning is for them. Not necessarily the standard NEPA where we have multiple options based on resources. We come together collectively to make sure we have one output. And this kind of just depicts that, where our traditions, our knowledge, our tribal members, and our resources are all being managed as one, and into the sense of we're doing it for the tribe, we're doing it for our younger generation, and not necessarily for each division itself. And part of that is our FMP recognizes that it's we have a cultural landscape, and our tribe and our ancestors have used this landscape for many generations for different resources and different values. This is just one example of scarred trees that we identify with for different reasons on the landscape, and we've used. We also manage it for different plant species. And so historically, we used fire for many things, as that was our primary tool. And so our FMP recognizes a few things, is restoration. It's based on restoration. We want to make sure that we include culture into our management decision. Our main goal is restoration of the landscape, and how to get there is returning fire back to the landscape. This is the current Flathead Indian Reservation. This is where we'll be visiting tomorrow. This is just another example of how even within this valley, we've done some more mapping and site identification that we can pass along and use for not only our future generations, but we use this information for our departments to understand what the meaning and what this landscape used to look like before we do a management tool, in order for us to be able to restore it back to that original use. And we do that by, like I said, we make sure cultural is a high level and first thing into our management decisions, and we do that in multiple ways, but the biggest way we do it is we use the culture committees, both Salish and Kootenai culture committees, and we include the elders and field trips with the elders to each landscape, each project, in order to get their input of, you know, what did this area used to look like, what was this area used for, and what do you want to see this area to be back to? And then we use their input in back to, so we're gaining TEK out of those conversations, and we're using our Western science tools to bring back that landscape to what it used to be. And based on all those variables, we've done a lot of different types of land conservation and land designations onto the Flathead Indian Reservation. As you see here, this map depicts multiple things. There's tribal primitive areas, tribal member only. There is the CSKT bison range. There is wildlife elk conservation units. There are roadless areas that are put for a reason to protect the cultural resources there. We have grizzly bear primary habitat conservation areas. But one big thing is there is along our east side of the reservation, we have the Mission Mountain Designated Wilderness, which was the first tribal designated wilderness in the nation, which buffers right against a congressional wilderness. And that was really brought forth by 3 yayas of our Salish community that really seen the importance of protecting those mountains, not only for, hey, when you come over the hill in Ravalli tomorrow, you'll see why they wanted to protect them. They're a beautiful, beautiful sight. It's breathtaking when you come over that hill and you see the mountain range for the first time there. But it's not only for its pristineness, but it's because there are cultural values, and it was tribally used, and our ancestors used those mountains for certain reasons, and we wanted to be able to protect, at the time, BIA management, or protect those resources from being exploited and managed and harvested. So, and ever since then, we've been keeping that same mindset and learning from our elders that our resources are important to us. We need to not just protect them, but revive them or restore them back to its original and cultural use that our tribe can use. So I wanted to give you kind of just a brief overlay of kind of how we how we use cultural into our management decisions. And I'll let these guys discuss their different departments and how we work together as a collective group for projects. Who's up? Kevin?
Testing. Kisu Kukit, everybody. Hukat clicks with them Titkat. My name is Good Morning Man in my language. My English given name is Kevin Askan. I welcome you all to our home here, and I'm really happy to see the different nations that are represented here. I want to say that I am also pretty happy to hear over the course of the presentations today that the term cultural is used in different ways. And in our work, it's important to include the identity of our peoples. So on our reservation, we have 3 different tribes, 2 Salish speaking, however, different language or different cultures with the Salish and Kalispeh. My tribe, the Sanka Kootenays, our culture is also different than the other 2, and what's unique about our department in the preservation is we work under the Section 106 law in order to cover our responsibilities per tangible cultural resources. However, through ordinance and support from our tribal council, we have a tribal preservation department. We do receive some grant money from the National Park Service to help that along. However, we're lucky to have a full department with over 13 employees. Now we've been up to 25 at one point, just in establishment. So we've been within our tribal government since 1996. And we are still building and learning on how to fit within the project. So in just hearing the issues of timelines and administration change and other elements, we try to fit as good as we can with the at the heart, trying to make sure that we keep our identity pretty strong and in front of us with each element of our department. So I actually work right directly within cultural resources. However, all of our departments that we have with the natural resources, the forestry, everyone in our departments has someone within our projects there has a hand in how we actually conduct and manage projects. So I'm gonna make this work here. So just like there was a slide before that Tony used, I'm out here in the field with our archaeologist and an elder discussing an area that has one of his family's burials, and this is right off our reservation boundary. This plot of land is used as a family campsite for the Adams and Vanderbergs, and we're recording cultural resources out in the field right as we're conducting an interview. With our responsibility that we have, we do our best to make sure that we meet our goals and objectives through pretty intense work, trying to meet also the time deadlines there are. I know that in forestry, that if you hold out too long, sometimes even when we're working in burned area emergency response places in the black of fires, that sometimes the timber will turn a certain color that's not marketable. And I won't get into that because I'm not a timber guy. I'm actually overwhelmed after hearing everyone talk about that stuff. But you guys are really smart scientists with that. But right here is a model of what we'd be looking at from our department. And there's a number of cultural resources we have on this map. And you see that we have an oral history reference with the OH, with the red polygon there. We have a green polygon that represents cultural plants. We have two place names right there that describe how the place was used or how that place was occupied. And in the background with the topo map, you see as of 1976, there was an aluminum plant there, a highway, and the depth of what that river looks like as of 1976. However, there could have been heavy fluctuation back in the day. This is how we would do our spatial analysis in assuring that we're covering all of our bases when it comes to our checkpoints within our Section 106 responsibilities. Right here is an example of how our databases actually look. We don't use this interface anymore, but we do house all of our data in a searchable data set, so we can get right when the last time we were out there with elders. In that picture right there, Again, today in 2025, we would do our best to represent people that are not with us anymore. All three of these people in this photo are not with us anymore. So we'd want to make sure that we carry out the legacy that was left, captured even within this data set right here. There's a photo of them actually sitting out on site. Maybe we're talking a little bit about the description of what they were talking about with the place name. And altogether, we want to make sure, we want to assure that all of our data is searchable. Here's a model of how we would actually conduct our work through the databases. Again, there's a lot of photo representation here, but there's quite a library we have that actually holds all of this data, which helps us expedite our work as cultural resource managers, again, to try to hit that 45-day to 90-day deadline. In this slide here, I'm showing two photos, right? So if you see that photo with the red dye there, it looks like dye. That's actually a rock that was used to crush berries, and it shows an example of cultural resources use. The bottom right below it was that same rock after a fire event 2 years later. We kept a pretty good eye on that site there and the area around it, with some recommendations of some plants to actually plant, or in the restoration effort, we did some suggestion on what to plant around it. But basically, the rock is okay today, and it still shines red when it rains out there, so that's pretty good. And then on the side again, you see just some other usual cultural features we find out there in the field. We have an artifact right in the middle. Looks like a broken biface. We have a pictograph representation photo, and we have another, we call those scar trees, or culturally modified trees. These are important in many elements, as Tony has mentioned. Those are important cultural resources. That might be my last slide. Yep, it is. So all in all, we work our best, again, as cultural resource managers to assure that we cover all of our bases as Native peoples. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon. My name is Stephen McDonald. I am the department head for CSKT Forestry. When I first came up, I was a fire aide and saw that I really liked this kind of work, working outdoors, working in the environment. And then I started working with foresters, and I kind of liked that idea, plus they got paid a little better. So I went on to school, well, first I went in the military, and in the intro, they talked about my military time. It was more appropriately falling out of perfectly good airplanes, but that's what I did. I'm always curious when I'm in a crowd like this, how many veterans do we have in the room right now? If I could just see a show of hands. Thank you for your service. It's always nice when somebody recognizes that, you know, you did that and you put your time into that. So what I'm going to talk about is our program of forestry. And we have a mission statement, and basically our mission statement is to promote perpetually productive ecosystems for future generations. That's the idea. That's the idea that we are going to promote our forests, try and correct some of the mismanagement or different types of management that were done in the past. I mean, all of us in this room, in a way, live with maybe the sins of our fathers and how things were done back in the 60s and 70s, because everything they did, they thought they were doing the right thing. And then now there's been more science, more knowledge gained as to, especially within the cultural aspect of the land and the people that reside on those reservations that have forests. So our decisions will be based on tribal, social, and economic needs, as well as sound scientific and ecological principles. That's what we're trying to do. This is the forestry program in a nutshell. We have a division of project planning, which includes timber sales, forest management inventory and planning, permits and allotments, and I'm sure this is the same throughout most of Indian country, especially in the Northwest. We have a division of fire. Our fire program, as you'll see in a second, is very top of the line. We're one of the more progressive, more advanced fire programs, I believe, in the Northwest. They have a wildland fire operations program, which is the program putting the fires out. We got a prescribed fire and fuels program, which is helping to manage the fuels. And we have a prevention program that goes out and speaks to the public and the schools and everybody else, trying to inform them of the role of fire, the role of fire prevention, and also the role of how cultural fire plays a part in our society. We have a forest development program that includes reforestation, planting of trees, timber stand improvement, that's the thinners, and a heavy equipment program which does a lot of special projects and a lot of different activities post-harvest and pre-harvest and road building and everything else in between. So it's a pretty robust program. So the people that work in there, they make me look good. I know you can't see this because I can't see it, but so on the left side of this screen is our forestry program, and on the right side of this screen is our fire program. Those are, and I'll just let you know, there's a lot of vacancies there, so if there's anybody out there who'd like to come to work for the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes that would like a change of scenery, we're more than welcome to entertain that. I always like to start off with a little bit of history. I think we've covered some of this already. There are two distinct tribal entities on the reservation, Salish speaking and the Kasanka Kootenai people and their language. They're two distinct tribes, and they have their own distinct cultures and distinct languages. The Flathead Reservation at the time of the signing of the treaty was about, well, it is right now it's 1.3 million acres, and that includes the southern half of Flathead Lake. Before the signing of the treaty, we estimated, and I don't know if this is a correct number or not, but it was 20 million acres that we kind of aboriginal home at the time of the signing of the 1855 treaty, Hellgate Treaty. For your information, the Hellgate Treaty, Hellgate is just that canyon over here that you can see if you were at the icebreaker the other night. So, historical events. 1855 Hellgate Treaty signing. In 1883, the Northern Pacific Railroad built tracks through the reservation. They removed 2.7 million board feet of timber. The tribes received $5,400. This was the first time that the tribe made income from the sale of their timber. And so this is kind of significant. And then it was dispersed to the tribal membership after that. In 1887, the Dawes Act, the Allotment Act, I think, this is a common story throughout the Northwest and all over the country, actually, was enacted. The Flathead Allotment Act was enacted in 1904. So with the 1862 and the 1906 Homestead Acts, the reservation opened up to homesteading in 1910. And these were So allotments were given out to the tribal people. What was left over was then opened up to the homesteaders that came in. So in 160 acres was given to non-Indian homesteaders through the Dawes Act. At that time, half of the acres within the tribal reservation boundaries that was set by the treaty were in non-Indian ownership. So in 1910, federal government granted the tribes to sell timber. So a timber program was starting to get established at that point. In 1924, Native Americans were granted U.S. citizenship and the right to vote. In the 1930s, after all of the different land things that happened, the allotments, and all the other homesteading, the tribes itself only had ownership of 30% of the land base within the tribal reservation boundary. In 1934, Indian Reorganization Act, the tribal governments established, tribal governments were allowed to be established. And in 1935, my understanding is that CSKT were one of the very first to approve a constitution and charter and have a tribal government. And it's very similar to what it is today. In 1975, Indian Self-Determination Act was allowed the tribes to start taking more control of their lands through their own government. So that kind of leads me to these maps, and these I'm going to go through these kind of quick. The map on the left, the solid green, that was the tribal ownership of what the tribe owned in the signing of the treaty. So after the first, the next map on the right shows what ownerships or what the allotments did or were given out to the tribal membership. The map on the left is a product of what those lands that were left over and not claimed by the allotments were opened up for homesteading. So I was at I think it was a SAF meeting, and I used the word pale. I didn't mean to, but the pale color is where fee ownership is, and that's where the homesteads were established. And then you can see in that purple area, that's the bison range, so that's federal ground. And we're going to be visiting that site tomorrow. So on the right, back in from 1922 to 1935, the dark brown ones were the second set of allotments that were given out to those Indian or Native or tribal members that had not received an allotment in the first go around. And then you see the little silver squares, those are when the state school sections were established. So there was a lot of things that were going on in the 30s which reduced the amount of land ownership that was of the tribes. So the only reason I bring all that up, just because everybody should know that stuff, is if you look at the current map on the left, that's, so it's 2021, so I need to update that. But on the right are the actual forested lands within the reservation. The correlation between the tribal ownership and the forested lands is pretty tight. So that meant that the land that the tribe owned during this time period was the forested lands. And because of that, the forest timber resource was a very important component to what the tribes were at that time. And it was, at one time, the main provider of revenues and jobs and income to the tribes for a very many years. Did I take your thunder? I just want to mention this real quick. And then I got a personal connection. This is big medicine. And the reason I'm bringing that up, because you guys all got these. And I just wonder if anybody would notice there's like a little ghost buffalo in there. This is who this is representing. This is Big Medicine. Big Medicine was born in 1933. And the reason I have another connection with him, it was my grandfather, John McDonald, who found him. He was a range rider for the bison range in 1933. and was the first guy to find him at the time. And so this is, I won't take any more thunder.
Oh, you're good.
Here we go. Okay, so managing our forest. I'm just going to go real quick, so I'm going to run out of time here. To manage for a diverse and sustainable forest, we must maintain and restore the processes, the structures, and functions under which our forests evolved. So over the course of time, we manage the forest, not we, but forestry, manage the forest, mostly for, product, volume, revenues. And so now we're trying to develop management strategies which emulate natural processes. We're trying to return our land to a condition that mimics, or what we, through modeling process, helped us determine what our forests look like before European contact. We were trying. We got our forests divided in different landscapes because they're kind of unique, and each landscape has a set of targets of what kind of stand conditions were in those landscapes, ranging from ground zero, like a disturbance went through there, a fire or something, to old growth. And through this modeling, we determined that there should be a certain percentage of this type of condition, a certain percentage of this condition on up. And we got like 14 or 13 different conditions that we're trying to meet. So when we're planning a timber sale, first, we're looking at stand conditions. We need to address bugs and bugs and disease. And then we're trying to emulate or determine how we move our forest towards these targets that we've established. And this was a group thing with the revision of our forest plan, which we're going through now. And this is the kind of thing that, we're in agreement that, we're never going to make it, but we're going to try. That is our goal, is to try to return our forest to that pre-European condition, trying to make our forests healthy and available for generations to come. So yeah, like I said, we do this on a landscape scale. So we have modeling the forest structure that existed prior, and that was the way we just talked about, analyzing the conditions that exist today. So you got to, just like all planning, you figure out where you want to go, you figure out where you are, and then you figure out how you get there. So we're analyzing the changes, determining the kinds of conditions that are sustainable and desirable, and at the same time, we have that social element of providing jobs and revenue for the tribes. So there's a lot that goes into our decision-making when we're developing our timber sales. And we do that in concert with all of the other resource specialists, the culture committees, the preservation office, the lands department, everybody that has a say or an interest or a resource that they want to either protect or enhance. And through our timber sale process, we address all of that and come to a consensus of what our timber sales are developed into and what we do. So this is kind of just a little more history. Over the course of time, back in 1962, we had a 412,000 acres of commercial land forest, or a commercial forest, which we could manage, and we had an annual cut of 60 million board feet. Through the course of time, we've had a lot of set-asides, like the Mission Mountain Wilderness, our 9-mile roadless divide, our buffer zone. There are several other areas which are set-asides now because the tribe has had the wisdom to say forest harvest is not a priority here. We want to preserve these sites. We want to manage these for not for timber, but for other resource values. And so as we stand now in 2020, this is 2021, we have 245,000 acres that we manage on a commercial basis, and our annual harvest is now is reduced now to 18.1 million board feet a year. And so with our inventories, our forest analysis, we have made sure that we're not cutting more than we're growing. So that's always been evident, at least in the last couple decades. So the overview of the plan. Restoration to a pre-European forest condition. That's basically what it is. We're trying to return our forests to a condition that we feel is more natural, and that in the analysis included disturbance such as fires, wind events, insects, and disease. So, with that, it's a pretty complex process that we went through, but we did finally think we settled on some numbers that we all agreed on, and we're trying to move towards those targets. So just part of what the theme of today was about is collaborations, and I just wanted to give a couple examples where forestry has been part of that. RTRL, the Reserve Treaty Rights Lands, we've had a couple of projects there. We're in the BLM, and I think Katie's going to touch on these. Maybe. So we're going to the Blackfoot Clark Fork Restoration Landscape, Lake County, which is a county on the reservation. We have very different relationships with that county. Some are very good, some are not so good. But we have a fuels reduction project with this source, reducing fuels that are adjacent, or fuels on lands that are adjacent to tribal lands. So when we reduce those fuels on those lands, that ensures that maybe our lands are not going to be affected if fire starts on their lands. So Tribal Forest Protection Act, a couple of years ago, we did a big project, a 1,000-acre project on the Lolo National Forest. It was mostly a fuels reduction. We used our personnel to set it up, our forestry staff, and then we used tribal loggers to do the fuels reduction and removal of that material. And we were under contract with the Forest Service, and they paid us for our services, and then they paid the loggers for their services. And it came at a very good time because there was a real slump in the market for us at that point. We have Good Neighbor Authority, the BLM. With the BLM right now, we got a project, the Blackfoot Clearwater Area Co-Stewardship. It's mostly in discussion phases, I believe. But those are, and then the Lolo National, we're surrounded by two forests, the Flathead National Forest and the Lolo National Forest. And we're participating in their revision of their forest management plan. So those are some of the collaborations that our forestry office has been involved with. And with that, I say thank you for listening.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? All right. My name is Rich Janssen, Jr. I'm Natural Resource Department Head. This is our department. This is the Tribal Natural Resources Department. I know you can't see it. Just like Steve said, our beady little eyes up here, we can't see it, so obviously you can't. At full staff, we are 258 people. Okay? Just like it says here, and I can barely read that. 3 divisions. We have 4 locations. Some of those you will see tomorrow. Ronan, Polson, Charlo, Moise, where you will be stopping at the river honoring site, and the Tribal Bison Range. And we also host a tribal campground, that is our Blue Bay Campground, located on the east side of Flathead Lake. We have 3 distinct divisions, and I want to make that clear. All work very close with other resource departments within the tribe, including our fire and forestry departments and tribal lands, especially our forestry departments. And Steve and I have known each other a long time. And can I ask, how many people are U of M grads? Go Grizz, all right. Yeah, there we go. Come on, shake your hand, come on. Yeah, I went to school here in fall of '89 is when I came. We actually had textbooks, actually hard textbooks. And Steve was here, and I didn't know him at the time. I saw his beady little eyes coming across the forestry school at the time, and I said, I know that guy. And, about 3-4 years later, I started working with him up in Flathead. And I spent 5 years as a forester. Then I went to natural resources. I just, I liked forestry, but I didn't love it. I just got bored. I was being outside by myself. So, there was no cell phones at the time, so it was kind of boring to me. But, I liked fire, but I went to NRD. So anyway, I digress. Sorry. The first division is our Environmental Protection Division of Natural Resources. And we work very close with the Environmental Protection Agency. That's our federal enforcement arm that we do on the reservation. And when you go to our reservation tomorrow, you're going to notice that we have a lot of non-Indian people up there. And we are the minority on our own reservation. It was homesteaded just like Tony and Steve already talked about. So we are the minority on our own reservation. It's not a typical reservation. And you will see the beauty of our lands. And you will go to the bison range that is part of Whisper's division that she oversees, of Fish, Wildlife, Recreation, and Conservation. We just got that restored back to our ownership on December 28th, 2020, after our Water Compact bill was finally signed by then President Trump, when he was president as 45, whatever. And so you're gonna see things. You probably see things on TV, Home and Garden Network, or these reality TV shows where people sell their homes in Polson, Montana. They never say it's on the Flathead Indian Reservation, but they're still sell their stuff on our land. And man, the prices of homes on our reservation is through the roof. Our own people cannot afford a home or land up there. Montana is the most expensive place to buy a home or land in the country right now. And it's crazy. And I'm going to go through that a little bit. Our last division is engineering and water resources. That's where our roads program, our dams program is located. And we just do so much with 258 people. Just some of the things I've done, there's natural resources in general. The things that I've done, they're all based on natural resources. And they could be anything from solid waste to water-based management, water conservation, the mining issues in British Columbia that are impacting Lake Kootenai at Libby Dam, where Teck coal mining, now Glencore, is mining, open pit mining, the coal that is shipped to Asia, refined into steel and brought back to the United States to build. So just other things that I do, park board, planning board. I'm not going to go into that too much. And Whisper redid this for me, and I thank her for doing that on Sunday. This is just some of the mines that I've flown over in British Columbia, and these impact our waters of the United States, our Aboriginal territory that is just straight north of us. Canada is not that far away right now. It's about three hours drive time. But this affects our water coming into the United States because it's open pit, and you get the rain, you get the snow melt, and all this selenium and nitrates gets into our water and comes downstream. And it affects our fish and our water quality, which we use in this area. Just some more overflights, and I took a small plane on this, and it was kind of scary leaving out of Kalispell or Gillespie, Montana. But once we got up there, this is just above Glacier National Park. and some of the USGS data collection on Lake Kootenai. You know, it's a boundary lake created by Libby Dam, part of the Columbia River Treaty, which is another thing that is on hold right now, that separates Canada and the United States, and our Kasanka Band has sister tribes of the Kootenai Nation just above in Canada that we converse with quite often. And so this is Libby Dam. I was up there last week for a meeting, and you know, there are white sturgeon of the Kootenai tribe of Idaho, and some of our tribe believe were in Flathead Lake, originally before the dam that we now own and manage, called the SKQ Dam, that we own and manage now, that we got back in 2015. And so, you know, our Environmental Protection Division that works well with our Tribal Forestry Department on many different things when the tribe builds forest roads or they put in large culverts. We have our own shoreline protection ordinance that went to the Supreme Court back in 1982 that states that we essentially own the bed and banks of Flathead Lake on the south half. So anytime somebody builds a dock on that structure, they pay us a rental fee for that. And I don't think you guys will get to Polson tomorrow, but you'll see all of that. Just Google search Polson, Montana. So we do many things: air quality, wetlands, GIS, non-point source. I mean, things that probably your tribe does as well. You know, underground storage tanks, Brownsfield, solid and hazardous waste. We do have federally credentialed inspectors that work as the enforcement agent for US EPA out of the Denver Regional Office for pesticides inspection, underground storage tanks, which are our gasoline or fuel stations, and our new one for sewage and water treatment plants on the reservation. So that's a pretty big deal to us, and we're the only tribe in the nation that has all three. And just continuing on, we have a shoreline protection board. These are some of the docks on Flathead Lake. Whisper, good job. Wow. She took about 5 hours to redo my whole presentation. So my presentation is pretty hokey, so thank you, Whisper. So this is a bird's eye view of Flathead Lake. It's the largest lake west of the Mississippi. Very clean lake because of us and our partners on the lake. It's been around. It's the puddle left over from Glacial Lake, Missoula, that we are standing on today. It's very important to our people, and you can see why people come here. We have many celebrities that live here. Phil Jackson, the former coach of the Lakers and the Bulls, has a place here. I mean, yeah, they walk around. Well, nobody bugs them. You know, it's pretty cool, actually. Just some of the things that we do. You know, you can kind of see, we deal with a lot of degradation of our lands and waterways. I think you can't really see on the top left there's a car in our Flathead River. Then you can see some treatment lagoons. Then our new boat on the bottom right, and then just us testing the water on one of our rivers. And then we had a barge sank in the middle of winter a few years ago. We had to call in the US EPA to bring in an actual specialist that could come in the winter and inflate this barge during February, and it was cold that day. It was really cold. Then we deal a lot with air quality issues. With climate change, we know it's here. I've seen the increases, Steve's seen, we've all seen it, the increased fire activity, the dry and the different insects that are here. Even in my house, in the last 5 years, I've never seen praying mantis in my yard, and they're here. It's weird. Just the difference that we're seeing and the changes and how we adapt to those changes. This was on the reservation. And it was quite a sight to see, and our Division of Fire is top-notch. They fought this pretty hard. You know, we just deal with a lot of this type of activity on our reservation, a lot of illegal dumping on our tribal lands that we have to deal with. And we don't have the funding to deal with that, but we just do because it's our lands. And, you know, we have these junkyards on the reservation that are regulated, but they're there. You know, just doing some of our underground storage tank stuff that we do. And then I'm going to segue into our other division, which is our Safety of Dams and Roads program through the BIA, Bureau of Reclamation. This was a new dam that we constructed. About a $30 million project, and all its purpose is to serve irrigators, and predominantly non-Indian irrigators, about 90% in this area near Charlotte-Moise that you will see tomorrow. And it cost $30 million. We did some great work, and here's some of my staff just going out into the field and measuring streams. Big part of our water compact, we are able to measure streams going back the last 30 years, and we are able to quantify our water rights needs. And, you know, we gave up a lot, but we finally got that water compact that passed in 2020. So this is a smaller version of an irrigation canal, which we measure, and again, the irrigation system was built back in 1910 to 1930. It's dilapidated. It's run by the BIA now. And our compact allowed us funding to rehabilitate this, but taking into account our cultural resources and mitigating for past practices that have happened, our fisheries resources, making it a lot better and more cohesive ecologically with our needs of our people. And these people that I work with to my right have been very instrumental in doing that. And we do a lot of work, in our roads program. This is some of the work that we've done at our bison range, that we've just improved the bison range tremendously, that you will see tomorrow, and Whispers Division has done a great job. And this is part of that dam project again, that I wanted to show you that we put a lot of tribal members to work on this, and a lot of Indian people to work on this at Davis-Bacon wages that were, high wage jobs, high skilled jobs, and it lasted well over a year, and it was very neat to see. I'll get into Whispers Division at the tail end of my talk, which I'm about done. We got fisheries, we got wildlife, recreation, and our fish and game conservation officers. We sell our permits online or in person. And we have a state tribal agreement that governs our fishing and bird hunting on the reservation. So anybody that lives on the reservation has to buy our permit. And once they do that, they can bird hunt or fish anywhere in the state of Montana as long as they live on the reservation. And our wardens, we've gone through full circle. I've had a lot of older wardens retire over the last 5 years, and I got some good young wardens now, and they're out on the landscape. They're checking people, and they're actually selling permits on the landscape with the technology that we have today using their cell phones. And last year we made the most we've ever made in the history since 1988 of $1.4 million that we hope goes straight back into our programs. We also have an AIS program, aquatic invasive species. Anybody heard of quagga or zebra mussels? Yeah, our lake, we're trying to keep them out. We found boats in Montana with quagga and zebra mussels. And our staff in Ravalli, you will go by that. We are manned, womaned, 24 hours a day now, or we're gonna be. Providing high quality, good paying positions. They're seasonal, but they're good paying positions. And they're boat checkers. They're able to stop anybody that comes onto the reservation, at least at that site, and they get their boat checked, their kayak, whatever. And, sometimes people get upset, and if they don't stop, we get them stopped with our game wardens, or if Montana Highway Patrol or somebody gets them stopped and turned around, because we take it very serious. We want to protect our lake. And we do sell lake trout. We have a big, huge, we call it MAC days. They're lake trout, Mackinac trout, legally introduced by the state in the 20s. We have a major contest every spring and fall. You're not going to be able to go up there, but we do have our own fish processing plant, and we sell the final product to major markets in cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York City, where they sell these fillets for like $90, to where we sell them for less than that, about $15 a fillet. And we do quite well. We tag these fish anywhere from 50 to 100 to we even have one out there for 10,000 each time, and it's only been caught once or twice, I think. We don't like to pay that out, but we have in the past. 10 grand's a lot of money. And just some of the, the mitigation work that we've done. That's me back in 1998, I think. You probably can't see me. I'm in the middle holding those lake trout. I didn't eat them. I really don't like lake trout, but that's our fishery staff doing some mitigation work and rehabilitation on some of the streams. And we're taking these streams that have been predominantly bulldozed to go straight for irrigation or cattle purposes, and we're recontouring them to mimic the natural flow, where they were in the past. And just some of the other pictures of Whisper's great work on the highway project. You'll go through the overpass tomorrow, and you'll see a lot of the highway work that we did and held the state and the feds' feet to the fire to prevent a lot of collisions between vehicles and our wildlife that we care so deeply about, especially the grizzly bear, that we're still working with the state. And hopefully we'll be able to keep our grants that we got over $120 million in the last 2 years to finish Highway 93 between St. Ignatius and Ronan. And we're praying that those don't get bothered next year. And this is where you're going to go tomorrow, the Bison Range. Totally revamped visitor center. It was built before 1990. So we've really revamped it to make it more accessible for people with disabilities. And you notice our tribal flag up there now. And just some of the work that we do and all the recreation opportunities that we provide. And just some of the things that we do that you may see tomorrow. We do a lot of water quality testing for aquatic zebra mussels on Flathead Lake. And, we do a lot of educational and outreach stuff with our annual river honoring event where you will go to as well tomorrow. So I'm just trying to give you an idea where you will be tomorrow. And that's the Flathead River. And just some of our game wardens. We are out in full force. We don't have problem bears, we have problem people that just can't seem to take care of their garbage, and we help educate them. Because we always say a fed bear is a dead bear. We have 8 wardens and one captain and 2 sergeants. We patrol the lake, we patrol our high mountain areas, and we go into the backcountry on snowmobiles or 4-wheelers. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Chestinyaco que Pesiat, Ketali McDonald Louis Squest, U Chesquex Epishin some M, U Kisiuk Whitnam Plan Pashki. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Katie McDonald. I just shared my Indian name in both our Salish and our Kasanka language. My name that was given to me by a family member as well as a war veteran means good morning moccasin woman. I take a lot of pride in that name. It was very fortunate to be able to receive that name. And so I try to do a pretty good job of representing a lot of that hard work that family member had to go through to be able to give me such an honorable name. Believe it or not, I am a funnier and even certified yapper than Steve McDonald here. It must be a McDonald trait, so Tony was happy to have me to go last and wrap it up. I just want to really start off by saying is, if we can take a moment to give an applause to all of our staff here that have worked really hard of representing all of our resource departments, as well as Whisper, who's been doing an incredible job, and Sadie Pion, who is the director of our culture committee. So thank you guys. I really do give a very from the heart thanks to our resource departments today, giving some time to really just scratch the very surface of the hard work that they do, the hardworking staff members that are even under them in their divisions and their departments. It's made my job incredibly easier to start thinking of these folks when we consider consultation, co-stewardship, co-management. And so what I really want to thank everybody here for is the legacies that each resource department has left behind, because through the hard work of, we've even been fortunate that we have several councilmen and women who have served as other parts within the resource departments over their careers that had left those legacies as well. And so a lot of those is really what I push forward to as a tribal relations specialist, is to think about when I meet with Region 1 Forest Service as well as the Missoula BLM Field Office, who we currently had signed an MOU to be able to continue code stewardship, as Steve had mentioned, in the Blackfoot Clearwater. And so here on this map, the reason I wanted to reuse this map here is to really give you a general idea, because as stated before, is that this is just covering 2 of our 3 tribes who have identified very soft and general boundaries. I know that there are other tribes who like to use hard boundaries. There's, it's great for them, but this is just how CSKT runs. And so to even tap more onto that is the data sharing. We had talked about that, or it was brought up earlier today from the panel. It's very unique to every single tribe. So if you are a Forest Service worker, BLM, any sort of other NGO, when you work with CSKT, that information that we keep and we hold is not out of unprofessionalism. It's just how CSKT works. It allows me to rely on our staff here when it comes to consultations, is that I will kind of twist your arm to communicate and talk with the other specialists that we have here sitting today and others that are within their departments. The professionalism that we sit on, every single department can really uphold meaningful consultation when it comes to working with the federal, state, and even private organizations, NGOs, others who either come to CSKT in a request for consultation, or a lot of times, like myself and Tony, may have some questions from folks outside of the state, nationwide, or have some questions for us how CSKT does things. So our specialists are learners. A lot of what my dad's mom had always said, she had retired at the age of 80, and she always said that she didn't know everything. She would always say, "Oh, I don't know very much," and she held so much knowledge, but that was just such a humbling traditional way of saying somebody else knows more. So you give that opportunity for somebody else to come forward and to be able to share that information. We are all knowledge keepers. But every single department here, we do an incredibly great job of trying to communicate with both of our elder advisory committees that sit with Sadie Pion, as well as Vernon Finley with the Kasanka Culture Committee as well. These elders, as we had mentioned, this is some of the generation that we have left that have been able to walk these properties, have been able to hear those stories. That information was then entrusted in them, who we use now in a bureaucratic way to be able to gather that information, to be able to use that as a model for how we will professionally step forward and try to communicate with federal, state, and private agencies. I hope that you can all, understand and hear the passion that every single one of these professionals had shared, is that because they have done incredibly hard work. They do A+ and even beyond work with minimal funding or tricky grants or the rollover, hoping that we can keep people on. We do an incredible job of communicating with Tony, who then brings it up to the executive staff and tribal council. But generally and ultimately, we work for the people. And when I say that is we use the membership, we use our tribal elders in capacities, whether we're holding culture committee meetings or we're making special meetings, or hopefully some of us can still rely on our family members to be able to share that information, to be able to give the membership an idea of the hard work that we have of our AIS folks who are putting time and time again out at these boat check inspections, to give people an idea of the hard work that they do, the time that they're away from their families, and even some of our professions where it's just flat out dangerous to be out there. We've got quite a bit of landscape, a lot of mountainous areas, a lot of regions where we said, we have wildlife that's out there. We have to, constantly stay on guard, but understand that it's a shared ecosystem and we'll continue to do our work. Working with tribal council, as my position, I should say, working with tribal council is a lot of the consultation letters that meet the requirement to consult with a federally recognized tribe. There's a trickle system. So I want to use this opportunity to educate the group here of really how CSKT works, and I think it has been so far a pretty smooth running process for utilizing my position as a tribal relations specialist. And I really appreciated what Mr. Reed Robinson had mentioned is, that education component, because that really is what it takes to be able to create those meaningful relationships. I know Kevin had talked about there's timelines. Of course, we all have timelines. We're all trying to meet a goal. We're all trying to understand each other in such a short capacity, whether it's 45 days or 30 days to comply and write a response letter to a proposal. So yeah, it can be complicated. But my job, what I like to do and what I've used in my experience as previously as the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer is making those quick responses. You have to constantly be in a reactive mode. As of yet, we're hoping that, we're turning the leaf and creating a new relationship where we're not necessarily meeting consultation after the proposal, all the other hard work has been done from these agencies, and we're being asked, is that okay? And then taking up more time of trying to negotiate or mitigate. And so the letters that meet our tribal council, our tribal chairman, of course, Chairman Dolson will review and be able to go over it. If he or tribal council members see an immediate action to be able to respond, they will do so and then notify Tony or myself, and then we will kind of follow through, make sure that we're meeting those requirements of communicating with these folks, just letting them know that on a executive staff level that we are there, we can help provide. A lot of what I do is the networking side of that provision to that communications. And so the networking part that I do is after that trickle system of that paper mail or email, whatever have you, meets my office. That again is where I'm making that communications back to that agency or private landowner, who have you. And I'm just letting them know, like, hey, we received your request. I also think that you should be meeting with Rich Janssen or Whisper Means. These are the folks that are more of the specialists in this area. And so with that networking, I'm also trying to help get folks kind of caught up. We've already taken care of that requirement to at least comment of interest for a big G to G consultation Tribal Council will then take care of it at that time. But I'm just really trying to make sure that the right people are talking, that the right specialists are communicating, that everybody in the room or behind the screen are having the opportunity to try to fully understand the capacity of the proposals that come across, because as we all heard today, there's a lot of different types of resources that we are trying to uphold, represent, preserve, and protect. And so with that preservation, I liked how Kevin had talked about, the tangible evidence, the stuff that you can feel, the stuff you can see. And when talking with the Forest Service and in that education process for myself, it's a lot of talking about, yes, we have the State Historic Preservation Office. Of course, they have their database. But what I'd like to educate folks is in talking on to what Kevin had mentioned, is that we also house our own database. And so what's unique about that is that we are not federally required to share that sensitive data to the State Historic Preservation Office. And so with that, when I receive emails or documentation saying, well, we've already done our 106, we've talked to the SHPO, I can then politely let them know, well, that's one side of your consultation. You shall also consult with CSKT, and we have information that the State Historic Preservation Office doesn't, and it's a mutual understanding. It's something that the SHPO, we've had a great relationship with Pete. He's fully put his efforts into making sure that the Preservation Office and the new TIPO, as well as my previous time there, had the opportunity to hear from agencies who were requesting consultation, going beyond just receiving their state historic saying, oh, yep, due to this information, you guys are good. Well, that intangible is what I'm now talking about. The intangible is more of like that feeling you get where I'm sure many of you here have had or you hold a special place to you. And in that area, you could be walking in with such a heavy heart, a clouded mind, but you walk into this area and everything just kind of falls off of you. The smells all of a sudden are stronger. You see colors that you haven't been paying attention to before. You all of a sudden are just more in tuned and connected to these areas. And on this map, as you see, that is literally such as the footprint that I am trying to make sure that I educate folks and uphold as well, to be able to understand it's not just about what you're going to receive as information from the State Historic Preservation Office as far as the tangible evidence to prove that CSKT had a footprint there in time and history, but through time immemorial, every single one of these locations are special. What's also unique about this map is it was part of a place name study. And there's many different capacities that the place name study had been used out of the Salish Kalispel Culture Committee throughout time, was yes, to educate and reconnect with our tribal elders while visiting locations throughout the state, but it was also to be able to hold that information as well, to be able to provide that foundation that us as resource specialists can stand on. And so being able to understand these place names is so special and so unique because it is all resource based. We talk about Missoula being the place of small bull trout. Bull trout was such a wide and strong commodity for us that it has literally been a resource that we knew we could fully depend on if getting over to the plains and hunting bison wasn't working, or if we had a drought and our roots and our medicines weren't fully popping out, or if there was a neighboring tribe where we just knew we couldn't get to these locations. We always knew that we could depend on our bull trout. And so being able to work on that staff to staff is really something I try to drive forward. I always let folks know that when I'm meeting at this pre-scoping, because that's what I like to call it when I'm meeting with the Forest Service of Region 1. We have the Flathead National Forest, the Kootenai National Forest, the Lolo National Forest, and the Bitterroot National Forest. And so when I'm walking into the room and I'm going to these FMP meetings and we have all these specialists who have all these great ideas, I ask them, well, how long have you been working on that? And some folks are, well, you know, it's kind of something we've been working on for a few years. And I'd say to them, if you haven't contacted CSKT in this pre-scoping, this idea area, I'm glad I'm here because now we can talk about this. What I come to the table for is just to kind of cut that time down of where we could have taken care of some of the outstanding issues, soft issues even. Sometimes it's just a misinterpretation, like we were saying earlier, or what was said earlier before in panel one, is sometimes the initial push and drive to be able to do something on behalf of CSKT doesn't align with CSKT initiatives. And so the way that I've been able to help our force within Region 1 in Missoula BLM Field Office is utilizing our CSKT Forest Management Plan. All the stuff that we've identified through the years of being able to get to a point now where we are updating this document is allowed us to understand, like, we've already kind of thought through our experiences of what may have not worked in the past. And so this living document then could be provided to the Forest Service. Instead of recreating that wheel, we have that information readily available. It's something that they can match on top of best management practices for the Forest Service. My absolute goal is to, like I said, help the Forest Service understand that CSKT representatives like ourselves are one component of being the specialists. We know what's right for these areas because we have survived through these areas for thousands of years. But ultimately, we will always rely on the clear message that comes from both of our elder advisory committees. I try to make sure that there's the possibilities for early communications on contracts, utilizing Good Neighbor Authority, America the Beautiful, any other type of funding mechanisms that could help our staff go cross-boundary and be able to do a lot of that work. The government-to-government tribal council updates is a very important part of it. You know, you could do your consultations with us, but ultimately we will be providing in a very formal government-to-government meeting with the forest supervisors, having them come in, presenting these proposals. They would already know if they see me in the room that more than likely we have contacted all the right people within CSKT Resources wheelhouse to make sure that we have just about everything looked over, but of course there's always time to be able to go over that. I really want to push on, we have had an incredible staff-to-staff relationship with Region 1 Forest Service, a lot of the NGOs that are here in the room today, as well as the Missoula BLM Field Office. Like I said, I think we are able to provide a lot more clearer way of connecting and communicating and understanding all of our legal boundaries as well as our expectations while working as professionals with the tribe, as well as across the table with professionals such as the federal side. Overall, we want to tap into the traditional knowledge to these agencies to be able to make sure that we have our best management practices. Later in the week, I will be talking more on the very detailed part of how CSKT got to the point of being able to create an MOU with the Missoula BLM Field Office. There's going to be, between myself and Aaron Carey, we're going to be talking more on the overall bigger plans that we have for the Blackfoot Clearwater. And so if you guys are interested, please be able to come to the workshop number 3. We're going to be talking more in depth. I just kind of wanted to go over as quickly as I could of how we work with the Forest Service. There's a lot of times where I remind folks that, you know, I don't know everything, but I have no problem to be able to go and find that information for folks. I rely a lot on Tony's experience as well as all the rest of the folks that we have here. And so I just want to say, Lemlem Shpesia, thank you.